Hi, my name is Oakley, and my sister stole $2 million right out from under me. While I was scraping by, she was on a luxury cruise in the Caribbean with her boyfriend. My captain saw them. I had the screenshots, the date, the drinks in their hands, but what hurts more? My own family helped her do it. They called it protecting the family name, but what they really meant was erasing mine. They didn't expect me to fight back, but I did. And now, do you want to know how I turned their silence into a subpoena? I had just closed my laptop and poured a cup of dark roast, my favorite, leaning against the balcony railing in my Brickell condo. The bay glistened under a soft, late-spring sun, palm fronds shaking in a warm breeze, honking boats down below. I exhaled, feeling the rare sense of quiet. Work emails done, no meetings until morning, a moment when the world outside didn't demand anything of me but simply to exist. Even so, my phone buzzed, and I stiffened. Only earlier, I'd caught my reflection in these sliding glass doors. Callista's face already perfect, always perfect, and me smiling politely beside her. The youngest daughter, always support staff, never the highlight. I usually keep to myself, I don't argue. But something inside me twinges whenever her name comes up in conversation, as everyone praises her latest success. The new designer line, the yacht photos, the glowing Instagram stories. I sip my coffee, bitterness mixing with caffeine. It's calm now, but I know storms pass. Around 9, my phone rings. Seraphine Hale. My heart knocks unevenly. She doesn't usually call at this hour. I say hello. Oakley, I saw Callista, she says, her voice low, shaky. What do you mean? My words feel small in the room. Seraphine tells me she was on a luxury cruise in the Caribbean, docked at dusk at St. Barth's. She looked across the deck. There, Callista, her boyfriend, dressed like they were in one of those glossy magazine shoots, sparkling lights, expensive wine, laughter echoing over teak wood. Callista's jewelry visible even from a distance. She winked, maybe towards someone I don't know. How bold, I think. How cruel, I press. She said she was in a wellness retreat. That was her alibi last week. She's mentioned yoga, juice cleanses, silent mornings, always something perfect, always something unreachable. Silence hangs. I stare at the sliding door, my reflection blurry. The bay, the palm trees, that pale gold light, all beautiful, mocking somehow. My lips go dry. A memory. Me at 16, sunburnt on a family beach picnic. Callista being praised by my mother for bringing home the best fruit salad, the prettiest plate. Me, limping back from the waves with sand between toes, and no comment, no praise. Just her smile, then looking away, then another picture of Callista in focus. I glance back at my phone. A Seraphine's breathing heavy through the line. I had to tell you. She says this like I'll believe, like there's no reason she's mistaken. I try to argue. Maybe she missaw. Maybe that man wasn't her boyfriend. Maybe the lights. Maybe optics. But I feel something coil in my chest. Something old. Something waiting. I fall asleep badly. Dreams splintered with laughter I didn't belong in. Yachts I never board. When I wake, light slants across my desk. I open my banking app on joint family investment accounts. Dad's name still on the header. I click on transaction history. My heart drops. $2 million. Gone. Cleaned out. No warning. No message. My access is restricted. Flagged. I scroll up, up, up. Multiple transfers, one after another, each authorized with credentials I used to have. Each destination account I don't recognize. Each withdrawal timed when Callista had a medical spa weekend. I feel lightheaded, nausea sharp. I drop the phone. My vision distorts. And I lean forward, clasp my hands. Betrayal does not feel like fire. It feels cold, precise. I reach for the phone again, for shelter, someone to explain this isn't real. I call Mom. She picks up. Oakley, darling, what are you talking about? I swallow. I keep my voice steady. $2 million is missing from Dad's investment fund. I can't get in. I think Callista did something. There's a pause. Too long. Her voice rises. Don't accuse your sister of things you don't understand. There's that phrase again. You don't understand. Like I'm too small. Like I'm mistaken. Like I'm jealous. I stare at the phone until the screen turns black. My hands tremble. I realize in that moment, I might be alone in this. I walk to the balcony again. Sunlight now harsh. Boats gone. I hold the railing. I whisper to the wind. If Callista really took it, I'm going to find out. I may not have proof yet, but my gut had never screamed this loud before. That thought had been looping in my head for 2 days straight, replaying with the persistence of a broken record I couldn't turn off. Sleep had become a stranger. Food tasted like dust in my mouth. The only thing keeping me upright was the sheer burn of adrenaline and a strange numb resolve I didn't even know I was capable of. I paced the living room barefoot, the wooden floor cool beneath my feet. My phone was clutched in my hand so tightly my knuckles ached, as though the device itself contained the answers the rest of the world refused to give me. Every few laps, I stopped in front of the same framed family photo hanging on the wall. Callista was in front, naturally, always front and center, her manicured hand clinging to Dad's arm like a trophy she had earned. Me? I was stuck in the background, lips pressed into a polite smile, hands folded neatly like some guest at my own life. That photo had been staged to look like harmony, but to me, it had always been a lie in glossy print. I wasn't ready to accuse her outright, not without evidence, but the moment Seraphine called me, something in me had cracked wide open. And once a crack forms, everything you've been trying to hold back just comes flooding through. At 4:06 a.m., with the sky outside shifting slowly from charcoal to navy, my phone buzzed. My heart leapt into my throat. It was a message from Seraphine. Encrypted folder. Trust no one. I'm only sending this once. Attached was a Dropbox link, password protected. My hands trembled as I typed in the code. My breath caught in my chest when the folder opened. The first image loaded. There she was. Callista. On the teak deck of a yacht, bathed in the molten orange glow of sunset. She was wearing a flowing white silk dress that looked like it belonged in a designer catalog, and diamond studs that sparkled even in still photography. Her head was tilted back in laughter, the kind of laugh you fake when you know you're being watched. In her hand was a cocktail so elegant it might as well have come straight from a luxury lifestyle ad. And Marco, her boyfriend, was leaning in, lips brushing her cheek, hand pressed casually against her waist like he owned her, like the whole damn world was theirs for the taking. The timestamp read, 48 hours ago, St. Barth's. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, stared again. The image didn't change. This wasn't my imagination. This wasn't some suspicion I'd conjured from envy or paranoia. This was proof. One by one, I scrolled through the rest of the images, each more damning than the last. In the final photo, something caught my eye, something that made my stomach drop. On her left wrist was Dad's bracelet. The bracelet, a thick silver chain with our family initials etched into it. Dad used to say it would only be passed down to the one who carries his legacy right. She hadn't earned it. She'd stolen it. My knees buckled beneath me, and I sank to the rug in front of the couch, letting the weight crash over me. My chest tightened, not from anger, not even betrayal. It was grief. Mourning the idea that Callista might ever change, might ever see me as anything more than background noise in the story she was constantly writing about herself. I pulled my knees to my chest and stared at the photos again, scrolling back and forth like some masochist. No filters, no excuses, just the truth, frozen in pixels. And in that truth, I saw the face of someone who believed, completely, that she would never be caught. I couldn't just sit there. I had to do something. With trembling fingers, I scrolled to Mom in my contacts. I told myself to breathe, to keep it gentle, to believe maybe she didn't know. Maybe this wasn't her fault. She picked up after 2 rings, voice groggy. Oakley? Honey, it's not even 7 in the morning. I need to talk to you about something serious, I said, forcing my tone calm. It's about Dad's investment fund. There's been money taken, and I think Callista... She didn't even let me finish. You're always jealous, she snapped, instantly awake. This again? You don't understand how things work, Oakley. Just because she's successful doesn't mean she's stealing. You need to stop inventing things. Mom, listen. No! She cut me off, her voice sharp enough to slice me open. Do you know how this makes us look? You're starting to sound unstable. That word, unstable, it hit harder than anything else she could have said. I wasn't even angry. I was numb, frozen. When the line went dead, I just stared at the call ended screen, like if I stared long enough it might undo the damage. A minute later, my phone buzzed again. A text, from Brett, Callista's husband. You need help. Seriously, don't drag us into your issues. Us, always us. They were a unit, and I was the outlier. I set the phone down gently, walked into the kitchen, and made toast. Not because I was hungry, but because I needed something, anything, to keep me moving. I let the toast go cold, chewed it anyway, staring blankly at the backsplash as though the tiles might rearrange themselves into answers. Afterward, my fingers moved on their own. I deleted the family group chat, just like that, gone. A tiny blue bubble of false connection erased in an instant. My chest ached, not for the money, not even for the betrayal, but for every birthday party I stayed late to clean up after. For every holiday I let them choose the menu. For every time I bit my tongue to keep the peace. I wasn't keeping the peace anymore. I went back to the photos, downloaded them all into 2 secure drives, then backed them up on a 3rd, just in case. I emailed a copy to myself with a coded subject line. Seraphine had said it best. Trust no one. By noon, the sun had shifted, shadows lengthening across my living room walls. I sat in that dim silence, letting the reality harden inside me. Finally, I clicked on the last photo in the batch, Callista, mid-laugh, champagne glass raised high. The caption read, "Here's to a new beginning for her." But what if her new beginning came at the cost of my entire past? But what if her new beginning came at the cost of my entire past? Rain tapped against my windows early on Saturday morning, steady and insistent, like a reminder that the world wouldn't pause just because mine felt fractured. I sat on the living room floor, legs curled beneath me, the couch looming like a quiet witness. Around me lay a scatter of old, dusty photo albums, spines cracked, corners frayed, pages yellowed with time. The soft gray daylight filtering through the clouds seemed too weak, almost timid, as though even the sun didn't want to expose the truths I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I reached for the first album and opened it. Inside, time unfolded with the cruelty of memory. There was a photo from a beach vacation when I was 8. Callista stood in a flowered sundress, her hair caught by the wind, looking every bit like she belonged on a magazine cover. Dad stood beside her, his arm around her shoulder, smiling wide in a way that made it clear who his favorite was. Me? I crouched halfway behind a lounge chair, my hands hidden, face turned away like I wasn't even supposed to be part of the moment. I flipped to the next page. Callista's birthday. She leaned forward, dozens of candles glowing before her, while everyone cheered her on. She blew them out with a radiant grin, basking in the light of their affection. Off to the side, almost cropped out, I stood with my shirt tucked unevenly, wearing a shy grin that never reached my eyes. Mom's arms were wrapped around Callista, her lips pressed against her cheek. I remembered standing there, silently hoping Mom would pull me into that embrace too, but she never did. Her focus, as always, was entirely on Callista. Page after page, the pattern repeated. Holidays, graduations, church services, every big event documented with Callista at the center. She shone like the star they all wanted her to be. My face was often shadowed, blurred, or partially cropped, like an afterthought. On one page, a perfect Christmas morning unfolded. Callista held a gift, her smile dazzling. In the corner of the frame, I was half hidden behind a heap of wrapping paper, almost swallowed whole by the background. I paused on a set of high school photos, my prom night. The camera had caught Callista's smile, effortless, dazzling, while I was caught mid-blink, my hair messy, my blush uneven. The cruelest part? Someone later photoshopped Callista into promotional posters for the school, using that same smile, plastering it across the halls. I found out years later. My picture wasn't even considered. That memory sat heavy in my throat. The buzz of my phone broke through the silence. A cousin had posted a family video montage on Facebook. I clicked, half curious, half dreading. The video opened with upbeat music and glossy transitions, clips of pool parties, lavish dinners, trips to St. Barth's, moments drenched in laughter and sun. Callista, of course, was everywhere, laughing in slow motion beneath tropical skies, her necklace glinting in golden light. My appearances, brief flashes, a cough, a quick glance, a moment where I raised my hand to fix my hair, then it cut away to Callista again, the spotlight refusing to shift. Captions appeared. Our family's brightest light, comments poured in beneath. Always a star, so lucky to have her, she carries the family. My chest tightened as I scrolled. Then I saw one aunt's comment. Oakley always humble, Callista always shines. I slammed the laptop shut. The soft cushion beneath me suddenly felt sharp against my back. And for the first time in a long time, I raised my voice out loud, to no one but the walls. I was never even meant to exist in this family. The sound echoed back at me, unfamiliar and raw. I didn't cry, not right away. My body seemed determined to hold everything in, even when it burned to let go. By evening, my decision was made. Callista had invited me to dinner under the guise of catching up about the fund, some vague mention of a shareholder meeting. I wasn't naive enough to believe her intentions were pure, but I went anyway. It was time to face her. Her house smelled of jasmine and expensive wine when I walked in. The air felt thick with curated warmth. Marco, her boyfriend, opened the door with a practiced smile, and Callista appeared behind him, her glow undeniable in the golden light of the hallway. She looked perfect. She always did. The dining table was set like a magazine spread, crystal glasses, polished silver, the chandelier casting soft light over the scene. Mom sat perched on one side, regal and composed, while Callista gleamed across from me, her confidence radiating. Conversation started polite enough, small talk about weather, about the market, about trivialities that meant nothing. But when the wine glasses were filled, Callista leaned back in her chair, smirking. "Tell me, Oakley," she asked, her tone casual but cutting. "Do you ever feel like nobody really sees you?" I froze, fork hovering. I let the words sink in before answering. "All the time." My voice came out quiet but steady. I locked eyes with her, then flicked my gaze to Mom. But maybe being seen isn't about standing next to someone in a photo. Callista's laugh was soft, almost musical, but the edge in it was sharp enough to wound. "You always make everything about you," she said. "Honestly, sometimes it feels like you think we're all auditioning for your approval." Mom chimed in, her agreement automatic. "You need to stop imagining that people are plotting against you. It's not healthy." I swallowed hard. I thought about every time I had bitten my tongue, every time I'd stayed silent to keep the peace, every time I had convinced myself I was being dramatic for wanting fairness. But in that moment, the knot in my chest loosened. The weight I had been carrying for years began to fall away. I set my fork down. The sound of glass sliding against porcelain filled the silence. "I see everything now," I said firmly. Not because I wanted to, but because I finally understood. And then I stood. I didn't wait for their reaction. Didn't wait for Callista's smirk to shift into feigned innocence or Mom's disappointment to harden. I simply turned and walked out. The night air was cold against my face as I stepped outside. Rain had slackened into a drizzle, the streets slick and shining. My shoes soaked quickly, but I didn't care. I didn't try to dry them. I didn't try to force myself back into the fragile illusion of family peace. Back at my condo, I flicked on the lamp. The photo albums were still sprawled across the floor, open to pages of forgotten moments. I traced my finger over the places where I had been erased, sometimes literally cropped out, sometimes overlooked entirely. I thought about how my life had been built on whispers and second chances, how I had always convinced myself there would be room for me if I just stayed quiet long enough. But that night, I made a decision. I would whisper no more. Before bed, I picked up my phone. My fingers hovered, then began to type. The message was short, but it carried the weight of everything I'd held back for years. I see you. I always have. The difference now? I'm not staying silent. I pressed send. The phone felt heavy in my hand afterward. Heavy, but honest. For once, the truth wasn't just something I carried quietly inside. It was out there now, irrevocable, undeniable. And it was mine. And silence, it turned out, was the only thing that had been keeping her safe. I checked my watch as I stood in the foyer of Mom's house early Sunday afternoon. The heavy chandelier above cast fractured light across the entryway, crystals scattering sunlight like broken glass, sparkle that concealed more than it revealed. My reflection shimmered faintly in the polished wood of the front door as I smoothed down my blouse, took one steadying breath, and stepped inside. The air smelled of lemon polish, jasmine drifting from the windowsill, and faint vanilla from scented candles. The whole space was curated, perfect family dinner ambiance, exactly the sort of tableau Callista would orchestrate with ease, like a stage director arranging props. She was already there when I arrived. Callista stood poised at the base of the curved staircase, greeting me with a smile so smooth it felt carved. She wore soft cream, pearls at her throat, hair styled in an elegant wave. Mom embraced her tightly, hands resting a moment longer on her back, her voice full of tender praise. "So nice to have you here," Mom said warmly, eyes glowing with maternal pride. When she turned to me, her smile was thinner, more practiced. I nodded, offering polite warmth, but inside I felt the weight of absence pressing down on me. The evidence I had collected, the cloud folder I had filled with damning proof of Callista's betrayal, gone, evaporated. I had checked my phone before leaving the car, then again inside Mom's living room. The encrypted folder Seraphine had sent was empty now. All the time-stamped photos, the high-resolution images of Callista with Marco, the stolen bracelet, wiped clean. Only one file remained, corrupted. A broken image icon that mocked me. We sat down to appetizers, bruschetta with sharp tomato and basil that carried the scent of rain-soaked gardens. Callista carried the conversation easily, talking about a charity she claimed to be funding for women's health care. Mom's face lit up as she looked at her. "She's been so generous," she said with conviction. Generous. Always that word. For Callista, generosity meant staged photos and checks written for applause. For the rest of us, generosity had always been invisible labor, sacrifices without recognition. The words stuck in my throat like ash. I excused myself quietly and slipped to the back porch. Miami's air wrapped around me, heavy and humid, thick with the smell of damp palms swaying in a sluggish breeze that offered no relief. I pulled out my phone and tapped the folder again. It's still nothing, just that corrupted thumbnail, static and useless. My stomach twisted. Seraphine's warning rang in my head like cold metal against stone. Trust no one. The glass door behind me slid open. I didn't need to turn to know it was her. Callista's presence was unmistakable, like a perfume that lingered too long. She stepped onto the porch with a glass of wine in hand, moving with that effortless confidence that had always made people believe her lies. "If you're going to accuse someone," she said lightly, voice carrying just enough edge to feel like a blade, "you should at least make sure you have backup copies." She wasn't mocking me, not exactly. It was more of a warning, a reminder that she was always a step ahead. My pulse pounded, but I didn't look away. Instead, I stared at her reflection in the sliding glass door. "I do," I said. My voice was quieter than I wanted it to be, but steady. "I do have backup." Her smirk deepened, sly and poisonous. She tilted her head toward the dining room where Mom sat waiting. "Oakley's been saving photos," she called, her tone dripping with condescension, like she was sharing a child's secret hobby. "She thinks everyone notices her." Mom's brow furrowed as she glanced toward me. "Photography isn't proof, dear," she said softly, trying to smooth the moment over. Callista laughed, delicate and dismissive. "Yes, pictures, memories. That's all people cling to when they've got nothing else." She lifted her glass, the chandelier light catching on her necklace. It glittered deliberately, like everything about her existence, always polished, always displayed. Inside, my hands curled into fists. She thought she had destroyed my only leverage. She didn't know about the steps I'd taken the night before, sitting on my bedroom floor with files spread around me like scattered pieces of a puzzle. USB drives labeled and hidden, envelopes prepared for attorneys, backup copies in places she couldn't reach. The silence she had forced on me for years was finally cracking. Later, as dinner drew to its staged conclusion, flowers perfectly arranged at the center of the table, soft piano music humming faintly in the background, Mom raised the question I had been waiting for. "What about the trust accounts?" she asked carefully. Callista answered before I could speak. "It's all arranged," she said brightly, her tone soothing, rehearsed. "Oakley knows some paperwork got mixed up, but it's already being sorted." I studied Mom's face. For just a second, her expression flickered. I saw something there. Uncertainty, maybe guilt, maybe the shadow of doubt creeping in. I leaned forward, my voice calm but cutting. "The account under that roommate's ID, it's fraudulent," Seraphine told me. Mom's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. Her eyes darted from her dessert to me, then to Callista. For the first time in a long while, I saw hesitation break through her loyalty. Callista's laugh rang out, sharp this time, no trace of sweetness left. "You hear that, Mom? Oakley's crying wolf again. Reality just bites back harder." Her words echoed in the room like glass shattering. I rose from my chair. The plates rattled with the force of my movement. My head felt light, my chest hollow, but I refused to shrink. I had shrunk long enough. "You asked me once if I felt unseen," I said, my voice carrying through the room. "Well, I'm louder now, because keeping quiet cost me everything, and I'm not paying that price anymore." The silence after my words felt electric. Mom looked stunned, her lips parted as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. Callista's smirk faltered, just slightly, her eyes flashing with something raw and furious. I didn't give either of them the satisfaction of waiting. I walked out of the dining room, through the polished foyer, and pushed open the front door. Outside, dusk clung to the air, thick and heavy. The first drops of rain began to fall, cool against my skin. My car waited at the curb, windshield speckled with water. My pulse thudded with every step, a strange mix of punishment and cleansing. I slipped into the driver's seat and glanced in the rearview mirror. There, framed by the glow of the doorway, was Callista's silhouette. She stood frozen, furious, humiliated. Her figure looked smaller in that light, almost fragile, though I knew better. For the first time, I didn't flinch. She hadn't just tried to erase me. She had built her entire world on making sure no one else could see me either. And now, for the first time in my life, I had decided I would no longer disappear. She didn't just erase me. She made sure no one else would see me either. I stared at my reflection in the mirror that morning, midday light filtering through the slatted blinds, striping my face in bars of pale gold and shadow. My shirt was ironed crisp, my hair brushed into place, but I barely recognized the person staring back. The waves of fear that had held me captive for days were gone. In their place was something colder, sharper, clarity honed into a blade I had finally learned to sharpen for myself. I practiced aloud in that quiet apartment. "I've gathered everything. We'll meet at your office." The words felt heavy on my tongue, weighted with consequence. But they were truth. And truth no longer frightened me. Truth was the only weapon I had left. 2 days had passed since that disastrous dinner where Callista had dismissed me with her smug laughter and Mom had chosen her side yet again. I had spent those 2 days awake before sunrise, rain thrumming against the windows like a ticking clock. I drove downtown with a folder of documents pressed against my chest, parked blocks away from the financial law firm where I had secured an appointment. The sidewalks gleamed from the drizzle, streetlights glowing in puddles like melted coins. The brown envelope in my arms felt like a fragile secret. Photos, bank statements, screenshots, metadata, the kind of evidence that could crack open Callista's polished veneer. I pressed it close as though someone might try to rip it from me. Her name was Marisol Vega. She was an attorney with a reputation that reached farther than Miami, a woman who had built her career prosecuting white-collar fraud. I'd done my research. She was known for precision, for turning shadows into convictions. Marisol ushered me into her office, a high-rise room paneled with dark wood and glass. She asked me where I'd gotten my evidence, her voice even but curious. I laid the papers out on her desk, one by one, the cruise photos, the bank statements showing missing transfers, the forwarded emails, the timestamps. I explained Seraphine's role, her warning to trust no one. I spoke about Dad's investment account, about how I'd been restricted from access, about the bracelet Callista flaunted. Marisol listened with careful intensity, scribbling notes in a leather-bound pad. She didn't flinch when I faltered. She simply said, "If the evidence holds, your sister's exposure could be massive. This isn't family gossip. This is criminal." The word massive made my chest tighten. Relief and terror surged through me in equal measure. Exposure meant the truth would finally come out, but it also meant my family's dirty scaffolding collapsing into public view. After the meeting, drizzle followed me home, streaking my windshield. I parked, stepped into the quiet of my condo, and pulled out my phone. A new email notification glowed. Invitation. Celebration of abundance. Callista's PR team had outdone themselves. A yacht party on Biscayne Bay that very evening. I read the subject line twice, my stomach curdling. Celebration of abundance. They didn't even hide it. My thumb hovered over decline, but I didn't press. Instead, I saved it, because shadow evidence still counted. Because sometimes the truth didn't just need to exist, it needed to be witnessed. That evening, lightning cracked across the horizon, illuminating the bay in jagged silver. I chose my clothes carefully. Dark jeans, a tailored blazer, black boots, simple but strong. I wasn't there to dazzle. I was there to see. The marina glowed with golden lights strung along the dock. The yacht's reflection shimmered on the black water, music pulsing faintly as photographers snapped shots of arrivals, laughter, champagne corks, the hum of people celebrating wealth they believed was eternal. Callista stood at the bow like a queen ascending her throne. Her cheekbones caught the light, her laughter floated across the water. She held a cake shaped like a tiered tower, frosting decorated with the figure 2 millimeters. Sparklers hissed from the top as cameras flashed. A woman beside me tapped my arm. "Did you see the topper?" So bold. I nodded stiffly, though my stomach twisted, not with jealousy, but disgust. She wasn't just celebrating success, she was flaunting what she had stolen. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos from the shadows, not obvious, just enough. Every angle, every incriminating smile. My wallet might have been empty, but my phone was now heavy with data. Marco was there too, laughing, sipping his drink, standing behind her shoulder like a man convinced the past would never catch up. He looked smug, untouchable, like he'd found the perfect partner in crime. Later, I slipped inside the yacht's lounge, strings of white lights draped across the ceiling like constellations. My phone buzzed in my pocket, an email from Seraphine. Subject line, Marco, U.S. 2015. I opened it quickly, heart pounding. Public records she had dug up, an arrest in Texas, an alias, embezzlement charges, settled quietly but still on record. His old life surfacing through cracks he hadn't covered. I thought about the smile he wore in every photograph with Callista, the smug arm around her waist, the whispers of legitimacy he gave her. And now, another rotten layer revealed. The righteous anger inside me hardened into something steadier. I typed a message to Callista, fingers trembling but resolute. "I've filed. You'll be hearing from my attorney next week." My thumb hovered over send longer than I wanted to admit, but eventually I pressed it. The silence afterward sat heavy in my chest, like gears grinding into place. For nearly an hour, nothing. I left the party, stepped back onto the rain-slick dock, lightning splitting clouds above. The storm tangled my hair, soaked my jeans. Still, I walked tall, envelope clutched against me. Then my phone buzzed. A reply from Callista. "Cute. Hope your fantasy lawyer is better than your fantasy childhood." Her words were knives, but they didn't pierce. Not anymore. I'd hardened. Her cruelty was predictable, rehearsed. Mine was a new script. The rain hammered the yacht's hull as the water churned black beneath me. I didn't raise an umbrella. I didn't look back. I walked toward the parking lot, boots heavy with water, the envelope pressed tight to my chest. This was no bluff. People think they can hide forever, in sparkling dresses, in curated parties, in glowing photographs. But the law has its own undercurrents, and I was learning to swim in them. Driving home through deserted streets, street lamps flickered like broken signals. I gripped the wheel and thought about Callista's vision of her new beginning, a beginning where I no longer existed, where my presence was a footnote erased from the story. She was right about one thing. That beginning was real, but it wouldn't be hers alone, because I had found something stronger than anger tonight, something deeper than grief. Resolve, visibility. And this time, she couldn't take that from me. If storms are what she's best at, then I'll make sure I'm lightning. My phone buzzed just as I slid my coffee toward the edge of the kitchen counter. A new voicemail from an unknown number. I hesitated before pressing play. The voice was soft, trembling almost, but clear. She forged everything. I'll testify. My heart clenched. The rain was falling heavier now outside my condo, tapping against the window pane in rapid drips, as though urging me forward. By mid-morning, I drove to a small cafe near the courthouse. The sky above was swollen with clouds, darker than the Miami I usually adored. I parked and grabbed the envelope I had packed last night, copies of bank statements, cruise photos, legal notes. I stepped through rain under the awning, shook off droplets from the front of my blazer, and slung the envelope over my shoulder. She was waiting. Marisol, Callista's former assistant. Her hands wrapped around a to-go mug. She looked smaller than in the photos, shoulders tense, hair tied back. We spoke in hushed tones. She slid a thumb drive across the table, along with printed emails between Callista and Marco discussing changes to legal documents, altered authorizations, false signatures, manipulated board meeting minutes. I leaned forward, absorbing every word. She whispered, "I stayed quiet because I needed the job, but I can't unsee what I saw." A lightning crack somewhere in the distance rattled the cafe windows. I thanked her, folding the documents gently, thinking how perfectly she fit this unexpected role: whistleblower, reluctant hero. That afternoon, at the office of the company Callista and I built together, I arrived to find a board member waiting. My name had been removed from the founder's plaque, no longer listed. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "There's been a restructure, voting rights frozen." I forced calm. "So I build everything, and now I'm invisible in my own company?" He met my gaze. "Investors," he explained, "have concerns about stability." That's what he said, stability. I turned, voice low but steady. "You'll regret selling your souls for her spotlight." I walked out through the glass doors. The rings in my ears weren't just the sound, they were defiance. Back in my condo, the storm had turned thunderous. I sat on the edge of my bed, laptop open, files scattered. I didn't cry. I copied everything from my old company laptop: financial ledgers, shareholder emails, password logs. I drafted a post for social media, an outline of injustice perhaps, but I closed it. Court first, headlines later. Instead, I recorded a 3-minute video for Marisol and my attorney. Clear, factual, voice firm. These records show how access was diverted. These timestamps prove identity misuse. I saved it encrypted. The power this yielded wasn't in vengeance, it was in control. That evening, a notification. Voice note from Callista. Her voice, smooth as silk. "You're throwing away your only family. When I win this case, I won't even look back at you." There was calm in her threat, an attempt to make guilt feel like safety. I didn't reply. I forwarded the clip to Marisol and to my attorney. Executives had been involved. Family loyalty meant nothing when backed up by forged documents, misleading ledgers. On the way home, the rain pushed hard against my windshield. I drove through streets gleaming wet, the city reflections everywhere. Neon, headlights, shop windows. I gripped the steering wheel. Lightning lit up the buildings. Lightning inside me, too. In the rearview mirror, I saw Callista's townhouse across the street from the law firm's evening lights. See and be seen stage. I whispered to myself, she wants silence, but I'll make sure the whole country hears. Wind hissed around the car as I parked, rain still falling, but inside me, thunder cracked open something that would no longer be hidden, and that starts with a subpoena. I stepped out of my car under the portico of the waterfront hotel in Miami, white suit crisp despite the humidity. A small black envelope in my hand, heart hammering like a drum I could hardly ignore. When I arrived at the terrace where the brunch was held, the sky was overcast, tension in the air thicker than the scent of sea spray. Inside, the room was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, polished shoes on wooden floors, women in silk scarves, men talking investment returns and real estate. I paused at the doorway, watching Callista glide among the guests, her face a craft of ease and charm. She raised a champagne flute in mid-speech. "Today we celebrate empowerment," she said. Cameras flashed. Guests nodded, smiles wide but eyes unaware. I stayed back, quiet, my palms pressed into the envelope. I counted breaths so I could steady my voice. I watched as she brought up a woman who benefited from her charity. She spoke of contributions, awards, and how real change comes from bold leadership. Then someone in a dark suit approached her. Not security, someone official, a clerk with a folder. He handed Callista the document. She laughed, thought it was a promotional contract or new donor memo. I saw her smile flicker when she glanced down. Her eyes widened. She read, "Freeze all assets pending federal investigation. Subpoena issued under case number." Silence rippled across the room. Camera shutters clicked. The music stuttered, laughter eased, faces turned. Callista raised her eyes, her glass shaking in her hand. I moved forward, not sure if I should, but couldn't stay still. I walked past the pool view, past people who had never known me, never given me a second glance. I placed one foot on each polished tile. Her voice trembled. "This is nothing. There's been a mistake." She tried to mask panic with indignation. I looked at her from across the room. "Your luxury has an expiration date," I said, calm. The words weren't shouted. They were clear enough. Tense enough, she insisted no misdeeds happened, that it was a smear campaign, something I cooked up in my jealousy, but I met her tone. I didn't shake. "That's the difference, Callista. I don't need applause. I just need the truth to show up on time." Mom cried out, something about shame, about not turning this into family drama. Some guests murmured, "What is she saying?" Others applauded softly, not because they agreed, but because so little of this moment ever belonged to me. I slipped away before dessert. Outside, the yacht dock glimmered under reflected lights. I retrieved my phone and opened the envelope. The subpoena listed her assets. The Coral Gables duplex, shared bank accounts, that yacht spotted by Seraphine. I read the lines under fluorescent street lamps. Pending seizure. My attorney's text came in. "This is the beginning of the end." The rain came then, soft at first, then steady. I stood near the water's edge, slick stones under my shoes. I let the damp wind slice across my face. I thought, this is justice in motion. It doesn't erase the past, but it changes something fundamental. In the reflection of the yacht lights in the harbor, I saw Callista's canvas of perfection crack. I saw her posture fall, her mask slip. I saw the truth hiding behind her ad campaigns and gala photos. I didn't feel triumph, not yet. More like clarity, a quiet kind of satisfaction. I knew the world was watching now. I knew I was no longer invisible. Next stop, court. Next stop, court. I stepped through the metal detector at the Miami-Dade County Courthouse, envelope in hand, USB drive nestled between my fingers. My navy suit felt solid, professional, as if the fabric could armor me against every insult Callista might deliver today. The corridor lights cast long shadows. Reporters, photographers lined the halls beyond the barrier, cameras clicking in hushed solidarity. I kept my head high. When I entered the courtroom, the room buzzed with electricity. Callista walked in late, turning toward the gallery with a practiced smile. Her heels clicked, her dress immaculate, perfume faint but flawless. Lawyers adjusted jackets. Mom sat in the front row, clutching a lace handkerchief, her face pale behind composed makeup. I pulled out a chair at the plaintiff's side table, laying the USB on top of my legal folder. Marisol Vega rose. She had physical copies of emails, screenshots already certified, board resolutions, account logs. I watched the former assistant, hands trembling, take the stand. Miss Vega, did you ever alter legal documents at Callista's request? Marisol inhaled. Yes, she said, voice quivering. She brought out an exhibit, emails where Callista had diverted account access, changed signatures, renamed routes of funds. Judges flipped through them. Callista froze for a moment, trying to smile it off, but her jaw clenched ever so slightly. Then came my move. I stood, approached the podium. I pressed play on the short recording I'd buried until now. Callista's voice, confident, bragging over an expensive dinner to Marco. Oakley doesn't even know the money's moved, she said, laughing lightly. She still thinks Dad wanted her in the will. Heart pounding, I heard gasps in the room. Callista's eyes shot toward me. Her face lost color. The judge leaned forward. Cooling myself, I sat back down. Callista's attorney objected, but the judge overruled, letting the recording stand as evidence. I felt my pulse shift. Guilt, shame, triumph all blended, but the rush of vindication surged strongest. Callista rose, face flushed. She opened her mouth, a tremor in her voice first. "You think you're better than me, Oakley?" she shouted. "You were always just a background extra." Her voice cracked. The gallery turned. Whispers grew. Mom gasped. Reporters scribbled. A woman behind me cried, "Oh my!" I kept quiet. My silence carried more weight than any shout. I clenched my hands under the table. My eyes never left Callista's as the judge rapped the gavel. "Order!" he said. "Ms. Callista, you will lower your voice or you'll be held in contempt." She trembled, lips parted, no reply. Later, I was back in my condo, lights dim. I replayed the recording in my head, the USB glowing under lamplight beside me. On my desk laid the asset freeze order, duplex in Coral Gables, yacht listed in the documents, shared accounts frozen for the investigation. My attorney's message had arrived while I sorted through paperwork. Everything is in place. Legal pressure mounting. Rain cascaded outside, muffling city sounds. I leaned back, letting the damp wind stroke my hair. No one applauded me, no dramatic scene, but the difference was unmistakable. I wasn't voiceless anymore. Court adjourned with the judge saying, "We'll reconvene next week for a final ruling, but no matter what the court says, I already got what I needed." Stepping into the courtroom that final day, my breath felt steadier than I expected. 2 weeks had passed since the explosive hearing. Subpoenas, media flashes, frozen assets. I wore an old navy dress, simple, respectful, the kind of outfit that says I belong here. In my pocket, my attorney's last note confirming that my name was officially cleared in all financial records. That ledger that once held ghost entries bearing Callista's false signatures no longer touched me. I walked to the bench, the judge already seated, lawyers on both sides. Reporters sat quiet, just outside the glass partition, pens poised. My mother sat in the gallery, shoulders hunched, eyes tired but fixed on me. A few familiar faces nodded, neighbors, colleagues I once taught, friends who sent texts early morning when whispers of evidence began. I nodded back. This was not about winning now. It was about truth. The judge's voice was firm. Partial restitution awarded, assets forfeit. The Coral Gables duplex, the yacht, that floating symbol of luxury, both to be transferred. Callista must pay back what was diverted, face federal investigation. Documents cleared Oakley Vance's name entirely. No lingering question in the public record. I exhaled something I hadn't known I was holding. Relief. The press outside roared quietly. Sisters, courtroom, scandal. Flashbulbs, murmurs. I did not respond. I stayed composed, letting the verdict land where it needed to. I exited behind lawyers without looking at the cameras, walked into the sunshine. Light felt different, honest. Back home, I found old journals stacked in boxes, spiral notebooks, leather-bound, pages yellowed. I opened one. Entry after entry. All I wanted was to be seen. I read, tears coming not from hurt, but release. So much of me had lived small, smiling when called, pausing when asked, hiding behind compliments that never reached me. Now I saw I was more. I decided to write a letter. Pen meeting paper under lamplight. Callista, if you ever understand what love without control feels like, maybe then you'll know who I was trying to be. I paused, pen hovering. I knew I would never send it. Because the recipient wasn't Callista, it was me. It was my heart, knowing it's possible to walk away without vengeance, to heal without approval. Weeks later, I drove out of Florida, winding roads leading me north to a small beach town in North Carolina. My rented cottage was modest, porch overlooking dunes and the Atlantic. I opened my laptop each morning, working remotely with a nonprofit helping women recover from financial abuse. I looked out at saltwater horizon, breathing in breeze that felt like a cleanse. I held a cup of coffee crooked in my hands, genuine smile growing in cracks I'd hidden for years. The sea whispered truths. Forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet recognition that I don't owe anyone peace I didn't get. That I'm allowed to carry scars and also be whole. I think of Mom, of Callista, of the empty spaces in boxed family photos. I think of Seraphine sending images, Marisol's words under oath, the recording that caused the room to shift. All of it shaped me. And now I step forward, not unbroken, but certain. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for the parts of me that believed I wasn't enough. Now I know I am. As I reflect on everything that happened, one thing becomes clear. Standing up for yourself and seeking the truth is never a betrayal, it's survival. Life may place you in the shadows of others, but your voice, courage, and integrity define your real power. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal the hidden battles within families and the triumph of resilience.